Welcome to It Comes in Pints, a Seattle Study Club podcast where we will explore a myriad of topics: clinical, health and well-being, psychological, education, business, and much more. I'm your host, Greg Tice.
Hi, I'm Tim David. I am a professional speaker and author and former international award-winning mentalist. So I beat out all 6 other people.
And I'd like to welcome everyone to the newest episode of It Comes in Pints, a Seattle Study Club podcast with me, your host, Greg Tice. And today we are fortunate enough to have as our guest Tim David, who, shameless plug, will be one of the keynote speakers at Symposium in Marco Island, Florida in January. Make sure you sign up for that meeting. So, Tim, one of the traditions here, one of the things we like to do, because I really want this to be you and I sitting in a pub having a conversation. In order to do that, we need a drink. So I'm sure you brought something with you to drink today. What are you drinking today?
I did, and there's a story behind it. So I am what I like to think of myself as sober curious, but I also wanted to participate in joining the fun today. I am not fully sober, so I was at a pool party this weekend at my brother's, and these are popular right now. And I ended up with this in my bag. It got sent home with me. It's a lime margarita by Cutwater, a cocktail in a can. I'll tell you, this thing looks dangerous to me because I'm noticing this number of 12.5%, which is pretty significant. But hey, maybe that's why they're so popular. I don't know. We'll see.
It could be. This will be a fun interview at 12.5%.
Yeah, this is my primary beverage right here, is a can of water.
And I'm just doing a simple Canadian whiskey today. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Let's crack this open.
And I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Likewise.
So you've got a pretty fascinating background. Author, speaker, consultant. But you started as a mentalist and a magician. So kind of 2 questions, because part of this is in your bio, but the other question is more relevant to me. First question is, what's a brain science magician?
I love it. This is something I was trying to find a way to describe what I do so that it was clear, it was concise, but also interesting. And one of the things about psychology and the psychology of communication, which is where I primarily focus on and write about and speak about, has to do with the brain needs a hook, right? It needs something to hold on to. You can't introduce something totally new. It won't create curiosity. Sometimes we think that mystery creates curiosity. Well, there's a certain amount of mystery that will create curiosity in people's minds. So if I were to say to somebody, I'm a mentalist, now this is before Oz Perlman became popular on the internet. This is before, and he and I were kind of running in the same circles way back in the day. This is before even Darren Brown became popular on YouTube over here. A-list celebrity over in the UK. Not so much over here. So the point is, nobody knew what a mentalist was.
Right.
So I didn't want to just say, I don't know, psychic, because that's not true, number one. And, I didn't want to say mind reader, which is, sort of kind of true if you think about it. But ultimately, I settled on brain science magician because that's what I wanted my performances to point to, was just the fascinating magic that really is true about the human brain. And it can do some amazing things. It can also do some ridiculous things, but it can do some amazing things as well. So that's where brain science magician came from. I played around with so many words, Greg. On my business card, I think it said the phrase neurological, like Neuro. It said scientific with a PSY. It said cerebral, SURR. So all these play on words. And then the final one was fun believable. Like it was, I didn't know what I didn't know how to really communicate this full experience in a nice little package. And I think that's true for so many people about what they do. How do
Yeah.
you communicate it?
Well, I like the title because really it's what magic is. You're playing with people's perceptions, with their quote unquote reality or the way they perceive reality. So I think that fits. All right. Here's to me, the more fascinating question. I want to know about your journey into magic, mentalism, entertaining. Like, what was the first spark? Because you look back now, and I'm sure you tell your kids, don't do magic in high school. Unless you want to get beat up. So how did this come about for you? What sparked the interest? How did that grow?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this in a bit of a different way than I normally do. I kind of have my standard answer to this, Greg, and I get the sense that this is not sort of the standard podcast environment, and I'm going to try to give you the essence of what I think you're asking, because there is a chronology. There is the from the stage version that I've given. There's the story I've said on 100 podcasts before.
Sure.
But what I like about this is it's not like a villain origin story, but it's kind of like magic is a bit strange. It's a bit different, right?
Yeah.
And so as a child, I think many magicians share the same story. And this is not the version I typically tell to non-magicians, right? So most magicians will relate to this. Non-magicians can look at us magicians and laugh. So we typically start out as mostly male, mostly young, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, kind of a coming of age moment. Most of us are socially inept. I am off the charts, introverted, wildly shy, super bullied as a child, like absolutely fit the mold, right?
Yeah.
And so magic, the first interaction I had with magic, I think, was Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards and Cambridge Renaissance festivals and that sort of stuff. And just the wonder and the mystery appealed to my nerdy self. Loved The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that kind of nonsense.
It comes in pints.
It comes in pints, which is a phrase I use probably more often than
You and me both.
so many applications for it. But I found a magic book that my brother had received as a gift or whatever, and I got it as a hand-me-down, or it was just laying around the house or whatever. And I was so excited to open the book and so disappointed to read it. You know? So I was with a friend. We were literally doing some kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y thing, but not a friend, a neighbor who tolerated me.
Yeah.
And I said, let's try this thing. And the first trick was, I don't know if I've ever told this story. The first trick was, it's kind of gross. You sprinkle pepper onto a glass of water, and then you run your finger down the center of the pepper, and the pepper separates like Noah, the parting of the Red Sea. What a miracle, because if I had the power, that's what I would do, is separate pepper on a glass. And the secret was you stick your finger in your ear and you run it around a little bit and you get some earwax, and that earwax will keep the... I don't know why we just didn't use Dawn, like a little drop of Dawn or something, and just... So that was the first hint of a secret that I would get, that I would realize, oh, this is kind of scandalous, kind of sneaky, kind of, again, it's mysterious, but it also has a rational explanation.
Yeah.
So that was the first trick I ever did. And when I started learning more and more tricks, and I started bringing them to indoor recess, and I would take out a deck of cards or a coin or something, and I would perform a trick, suddenly it was attention. So that's kind of where I got, I think, bit by the bug. And and then I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old.
And you carried through. A lot of us start hobbies or interests at 8, 9, 10 years old that by the time you hit high school, they're gone. So something obviously clicked with you there. And did you continue? Was there a point where you said, I'm done with this in your early years? Or,
Yes.
Or did you continue all the way through?
I very much remember a summer camp where I experienced a friend group for the first time. It was a 6-week live-in summer camp. I mean, I think my parents were even trying to get rid of me. And so it was eye-opening in terms of a social component. Like, wow, friends are fun. Like, this is completely a new experience. And so magic didn't line up with social interaction,
Yeah.
right? Music did. So I had this digital dexterity that I had developed through magic, and I applied it to the neck of a guitar,
Okay.
in my case, a bass guitar, and I, again, was able to develop and put my interest in that hobby. So the magic interest peaked and then waned, and then music took over. There was, and I never like hated magic or completely got over, I never fully stopped. But I do remember my friend asking me specifically one day, so what's bigger now, music or magic? And I looked him down, music, easy, hands down, no question, music. And I'll tell you what, there ain't no music career to speak of in my life, right? So something happened again, but I love the question. Yeah, super fun. Yeah, it became a social thing, and magic just wasn't compatible with the social. Neither was being smart, by the way. I was a straight A student, and I remember purposefully failing classes because I looked around me and I didn't see any of the popular kids getting like, amazing grades. They were all failing classes, and I remember my Spanish teacher stopped me in the hall one day, and she said, "Tim, what are you doing? You have a 0 for the year." Like you, and I would just write my name on stuff and hand it in, and I took it to the extreme, right? So anyway, that was all in the quest of trying to connect with people and trying to find a friendship and acceptance and all of that stuff that we strive for in middle and high school.
So when did magic come back then? When did it take its...
I had to work at McDonald's, Greg.
Okay.
When I had to work at McDonald's, and I needed to, and I was getting like $5.75 an hour or whatever. And I remember the days when I was 14, 15, going into these elementary schools and putting on the performances for the little kids, and they'd give you a check for $100, and I'm like, I make $100 an hour. Let's find that, how to do that again. So there was a practical component, but it was also just part of, again, I've always been a creative, and having the path where you go to college and you get your degree and you start your career, and it didn't line up with the creative component that my entire family followed the left brain. My mother was an accountant. My older brother became a sound engineer. My dad designed nuclear submarines for the Navy. And then I'm like, I want to be a magician. Like, I want to drop out of college and do magic tricks. So there was some friction there. There was some concern there. So that's part of a story that I might, that I tend to tell from stage, and kind of get into the layers of the journey to really ultimately human connection and what that's all about. So I've lost track of the original question, I believe, Greg, but I think you asked where magic came back. It was part practical, part the creative juices never really fully stopped, and I just loved the human brain and the playground of the human brain and what magic really brought to us.
It's pretty spectacular. So now you have 3 kids, all teens or preteens. So at what point did Dad's magic around the house stop being cool?
Never did I ever tell them that I was a magician.
Okay.
Here was my plan. My plan was, because I had daughters first. So the first situation was, I can't do 300 to 320 days a year on the road anymore. As a magician, I was traveling around a lot. Most of it was, I slept most nights in my own bed, but there was a lot of just occasionally I'd be gone for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
So it was practical again to find something that wasn't magic but made the same sort of income. And so when my children were born, that was the motivation. Time to hang up the top hat, the wand, and maybe get a real job, maybe go back, start a career, get a degree, kind of take that path. And it was my dad who said I was crazy for doing that. He's like, if you can stand on a stage, nobody wants to do that. There's got to be a way to monetize that in such a way that is happy and healthy for everybody involved. And he didn't say it in these words, but he's like, there's something that you do. There's something kind of with the way that you bring people together and connect people, and there's probably something there, you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I found speaking. But fast forward, I had my second daughter was born 2 years and 9 months later, and I still hadn't gotten off the road, and it was a real wake-up call. I really need to figure that out. So magic didn't fully really overlap with my kids' lives in terms of the career. And here was my plan. My plan was that to just keep magic in my back pocket until I needed it, right? Because I got 2 daughters. They're going to grow up and maybe bring a boy home someday. And so if I could make this moment happen where we have a 16-year-old daughter and her 16-year-old boyfriend, and the boyfriend says, please pass the salt, and I just look him dead in the eyes and the salt floats to him. Like, that would be worth all. And then, because she would genuinely be like, I didn't know, I don't know, how did he, you know? Whereas if, Dad doing his dumb magic again, right? So that was part of my, like, I wouldn't call it a plan, but a nice bonus that I was looking forward to very much.
Did that actually happen? Did you
It didn't. I broke the spell, Greg. I didn't quite make it. She was like probably 9. My middle child, now, you know, I have a son now, but my middle child was 7 or so. And she had those light up shoes. You walk and the shoes light up on flash all red. And so I would just pull the light out of the shoe and pass it around from hand to hand to make it disappear, and put it up my nose, it'd come out my ear. And it was this illusion of making light, and it just was too perfect. And that was the one, because I just couldn't resist it. I happened to have that trick on me, and the shoes were going off. It used to drive me nuts when they'd wear those shoes in the back seat. I used to keep thinking I was getting pulled over. But I broke the spell.
Amazing. Now, I know you tell this story a lot, and you may even tell it from stage. So the short version here is fine. But at some point, and you gave us a little taste of that, but at some point, did you just sit down and say, hang on, there's more going on here than just entertainment? At what point did you go, I have a foundation mentally or from a skill perspective that could literally help millions of people in their daily life? Was there an aha moment? Did it just kind of develop over time? What did that look like?
That's an awesome question. And I would love for it to be the bolt from the sky, just purpose being handed down from the heavens on a silver platter, and so clear and so, just ready-made. But it really wasn't. It like anything else, and I have this phrase that I use, and I work with a lot of other speakers who want to become speakers, and we talk about this a lot because they're waiting for that. And I tell them this phrase, and this phrase applies in so many areas of life. It is not clarity then action. That is not how life works. It is not clarity then action. So much more often, it is clarity via action.
Yep.
Right? And so when we take a step, we can see a little bit further. We take another step, we can see a little bit further, and life operates much more like bowling alley bumper lanes, and you just get bounced towards a general target, right?
Yeah.
So that's the real story. Is it really started with, I need to move away from magic, which is why I started doing mentalism, right? So it was magic at first. Then I started doing mentalism because I knew that if I wanted to get paid more, then I can't keep doing birthday parties. If I'm going to do corporate events, I need something that appeals to adults. And sponge balls magic is not going to be what appeals to adults, although they kind of do love it.
Yeah.
So I discovered mentalism, and it fascinated me, which is a big part too. So that was the first step, and then I started working with corporations and organizations just on their like holiday parties or annual, meetings or awards banquets and those types of things.
Yeah.
And saw the checks per gig going up and the number of gigs per year coming down. And so through just attending conferences that mentalists hang out at, magic marketing events, like there's real niche-y kind of stuff, I just discovered the world of professional speaking. And I didn't say like, I want to help people first. It literally started with, how can I get into speaking and what do I have to share? And I think there's some lesson in there is that most people don't fully understand, like, we're so familiar with our own lives and our own selves and our own story that we don't know how it could benefit other people.
The curse of knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, the curse of knowledge, right? We absolutely take it for granted. So it took a long time. It took mentors, it took coaches, it took trying different speaking topics. I thought a mentalist would be able to teach about sales and influence. And while that's true, and I wrote a book called True Influence and, 4 levels of influencing people and the magic words that motivate, engage, and influence, right? So that was sort of a beginning. But as I was writing these books and I was into the research and as I was literally looking at what I did, it wasn't manipulative, it wasn't sneaky, it wasn't like, it genuinely was about communicating and connecting with human beings.
Yeah.
And not only understanding, the psychology piece of it, because I think if you work with people, you really want to know how people work, and being able to understand how people work is a bridge, right? Is a bridge into understanding the person themselves. So that process is sort of how, and this was very much a bolt from the sky. I was doing all these different things. I had my hand in all these different areas and I was researching and reading, and I remember reading a neuroscience book a week for an entire year. And I ended up being like 56 neuroscience books actually, and just immersing myself completely. And there was a bolt from the sky moment when the phrase human connection just felt like it encapsulated everything I was really trying to say. And so that was 2008, 2009, maybe, I'm sorry, I got the timeline wrong. That's probably closer to 2012.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that was, and then now, boom, off to the races, right? Book deals, speaking tours, like all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I love what you do, and I think our audience in particular at Symposium will, because so much of what you present about and on is grounded in research, is grounded in the studies and the neuroscience and how the brain works. And you've mentioned this a couple of times, your core message is really around human connection. And there's lots of places to go here, but where I want to start with this, because connection is a pretty broad catch-all term, like culture or synergy. So how would Tim David define connection or human connection? What does that really mean?
Yeah, this is something that I think about a lot, Greg, and there is so much that happens as I'm preparing for an event and communicating what human connection means for this industry or for this organization or for this event. And first of all, I love that you mention research-based. Not a lot of people think, of an ex-magician as somebody who might have something. Again, I got a column in Psychology Today. This was named a top 10 psychology book of the year, and it's just absolutely like overly cited for sure. And so you're absolutely right in terms of that being a lot of broad possibilities, a lot of directions it could go. And so for me, I think one of my favorite research studies that has allowed me to bowling alley bumper to my definition of human connection. In its most practical, applicable sense, leadership, culture creation, even sales, this is the fork in the road, okay? So the study was mapping human relationships, mapping all of the different types of relationships that we have. Some are friends, some are acquaintances, some are spouses. How do we categorize all these relationships? There's dozens, hundreds, thousands of different possibilities. Where do they fall? And the researchers were able to literally create a map of all the human interactions that we have and the path that our brain takes in order to categorize people into certain buckets, right? So the first fork in the road is friend or foe, right?
Okay.
Safety, hostile or friendly, okay? And your brain does this fast. You've heard about first impressions. There's so much going on in the subconscious brain. There's a whole book on my shelf up there, Friend and Foe. I don't think you can see it, but it's off screen there. And it's by these two psychologists who just obsess over this one thing that the brain does. And it's kind of like, what's his name's, Hawking's book about was it Stephen Hawking wrote the book about the first 8 seconds or something like that, the Big Bang, like that first that little tiny moment. Well, it's kind of like that. The human brains interact. The first little, what's going on in that, and how do people categorize you as friend or foe, which is very relevant to salespeople who don't want to be immediately dismissed.
Yep.
Very relevant for magicians who don't want to immediately be categorized as, all right, magic boy, you're going to try to fool me? You're going to try to trick me? All right, let's see what you got. Okay.
Yeah.
In other words, how do you get into the friend bucket and do so on that subconscious level? You don't walk up to somebody and say, hi, I'm worthy of the friend bucket. It has to be, that's a version of the first step of human connection. And then the next one is, are we, let's say we're friends. Now, is this a private relationship or is this a public relationship? So many times we think of business and we say it's not personal, it's business.
Right.
We need to balance professional and personal, right? We need to have work-life balance. These are separate buckets. Our brain understands that.
Yes.
So let's go into the professional realm, which is where I operate most of the time working with professionals, right? And then this is the third fork in the road that I find most interesting, and that I think if we can nudge more and default more towards one end of this fork, we will create the types of human connections that the brains of the people around us will create the best responses and outcomes, okay? So the third fork, and this map is we're just going one path down the map, right? So we've got friend, we've got professional, okay? And now we've got relational and transactional. That's the next fork, right? Either relational or transactional. And with that comes a series of norms that we automatically operate within. If we think it's transactional, we operate with transactional norms. If we think it's a more of a relational thing, we operate with relational norms. And so my urging for people is to behave in such a way, to treat people in such a way. I have a framework, I called it the CB Speak model, and that's like before you speak, you see, you be, you see the human in front of you, you act human in response, authenticity, vulnerability, and that is how you get down the path to the place where it is a far more productive leader, follower role, far more productive salesperson, prospect role, and a parent-child role is going to be in a different bucket, but it's that same kind of thing. So my favorite example of transactional norms or relational norms is not that one is bad and one is good. It's that one must be appropriate for the situation. If you violate norms, connection is broken and you're in trouble with the brains around you. So if you stand up at Thanksgiving dinner and say, thank you, Grandma, for this wonderful feast that you have prepared. This turkey was moist and delicious. The stuffing was fantastic, as always. This is so good. The cranberry sauce from the can, just like I like it. Here is $50, Grandma. If you try to pay Grandma for turkey dinner on Thanksgiving, she's going to get mad, right? She'll slap it out of your hands. She'll be offended because you used transactional norms in a relational norms setting, right?
Yep.
So that one, I mean, I love nerding out on that stuff, Greg. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of because that's what most people, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we practically make, we know it's important. We know human connection is valuable and important. We know it's how we look back on our lives. We're not going to be thinking about like, well, I better, I wish I could just hug my college degree one more time. Like there's, we think about the relationships. We know it's important, but how do we practically, tactically bring it into our lives and into the workplace so that we can benefit from those connections, both again in terms of like outcomes, but also in terms of just how we feel about it, right? And that's the real key with this book is that the 4 levels of influencing people. is that it does you create influence in a way that doesn't make you feel bad at the end of the day, you know. So
Yeah. So, in your mind, is there, because I think really that's what Seattle Study Club is all about. It's about the relationship, it's about the connection. Is there a difference in your world between connection and community? And no's an acceptable answer here. You can say they're interchangeable, and that's fine.
well, I believe connection may be either and I'm thinking through this out loud. I've never been asked this. Maybe a requirement of community. It may be a subset. Communication. I'm sorry. Connection can happen between two people. I don't know that community can necessarily happen between two individuals.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to point exactly directly to the differences between the two. But I also know anytime we have different words for things, very often it's for a reason, and
Yeah.
and so there are differences. But yeah, my view of connection may be more process, and community may be more outcome.
I don't disagree, and I think connection is a prerequisite
Yeah.
to creating a community or having or being part of a community. And I love that sort of the path you went down, and you're sort of breaking it into two realms. There's the personal and the professional from a connection standpoint on this one wild map that we just went down. When I think about it on the professional side, most people want to be liked, right? They don't want to violate that norm, that they don't want to pay grandma at Thanksgiving, and they don't want to hug the gentleman they just met,
Right.
who they're hoping to do business with. But you've used the word a couple of times, outcome. What's the outcome from connection on the professional side that separates it, that elevates it from the transactional?
If I had to boil it down to one word, and I don't have to, but I will, it is a trust element. It's a trust factor. So within transactional norms versus relational norms, there's trust. We don't need trust as much for transactional. I give you the money, you give me the thing. Okay, we can have our contracts and our agreements. Relationally, as an ongoing situation, we might need some empathy. We might need some trust. And so the reason that's a big deal right now is, I don't know if you've ever looked around recently in terms of the state of trust in our world right now. And this is something that is it can be measured to a degree in terms of like surveys and things like that. We also have our old friend, the Edelman Trust Barometer, right? And every year they put out the trust report. What's the state of trust in the world right now? And last year it was the lowest since they've ever done it. And what I found quite interesting about the Edelman Trust Barometer last year, and also I think it's true this year as well, of the three groups, who is least trusted, right? You've got the media, you've got government, and you've got businesses. Who would you put at the top of the list of the least trusted in that group?
Today?
Feel like, yeah, as of today.
Media.
Think people trust the media the least?
Yes.
You're close. It is top three. The worst, least trusted group in all of that was business.
Business.
Right?
Interesting.
And so, and again, that's the world I operate in, typically corporations, but also a lot of like service-based, heart-centered, service-based kind of organizations as well. So who have a job to do, right? And so with that lack of trust, what hope do we have, right? Not just in the marketplace, there's lack of trust among within teams. Right now, we're talking not just culture, not just community, but culture. So, yeah, short answer is trust is the big one, and it hits business the hardest.
Well, I also think, and correct me if I'm getting off base here, but when, from a business perspective, if I'm looking at a trust-based, connection-based, relationship-based interaction, that spins into longer term, easier transactional business where I'm not always having to hunt. I'm farming a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind
Yeah,
of what I'm hearing you say.
there can absolutely be transactions within relationships,
Yeah.
right? Repeat clients, people who, come into the office over and over again because, you're there every 6 months, they're going to hop in
Yep.
and there is that almost, there's another path, by the way, that takes you to what the almost makes it feel like a family, right? There's kind of another, so it's the same sort of deal, but personal instead of professional, right? So that side of things, it leads you to a workplace that just, we feel like one big family here. Or clients who feel like they're, I go to a dentist who, is that vibe. It's like, it's a home that's been converted into a dentist's office. It feels homey.
Yep.
And the people there know me, they know my kids, they treat me like family, right? So it feels easy and there's no decision and there's no question about where I'm going, right? So, yes, is the short answer. There can be transactions that continue and fuel a business. You don't get paid for handshakes and hugs and high fives, and
No,
you can't
but it
continue.
feeds that piece. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the professional side of it. Let's talk about the personal side a little bit of connection. And I'm not necessarily talking about work-life balance here. I think that I hate that term personally. I don't think it exists. It's work-life integration if you really want to parse it a little bit. Are we losing that personal connection outside of the professional side of things? And if so, what's causing it? Is it COVID? Is it AI? Is it social media? Maybe we're not losing it, but it feels to me like we are.
Yeah, here's what I have in my brain about this is just a small handful of books I've read, and that's going to be the context here. I haven't done research on this in my own experience, but I do hear a lot about the loneliness epidemic. I do hear a lot about social isolation. I hear a lot about the fact that we're having fewer and fewer shared experiences. And that is partially by choice. We want to like what we like. We want the algorithm to feed us what we like, and we don't want to see what we don't like. And therefore, we're having our own little, I don't even know where my phone is, which is rare in this day and age, right? To have a phone that's not within arm's reach. But we have this experience of being isolated, right? I don't know if COVID caused more of it or revealed. I think we don't know what we have until it's gone. So I know in the meetings and events space that I operate quite a bit in, there was a massive pent-up demand after COVID. Yes. The demand spiked, right?
The need for face-to-face.
We
Absolutely.
We just missed each other. So I do know there is a need. It's a biological fundamental need to connect. The worst punishment we can give somebody is solitary confinement, right? In terms of just pulling them away from other people. It is physically damaging to the brain and body to use words or language, even images that suggest being removed from the group or isolated, or which is why there's so much attention placed on like bullying and ostracizing kids, or so that whole element. We know how dangerous it is, right? We know how concerning and how dangerous not just isolation, but there's a dehumanization component to our scroll holes, right? So it creates a gap, and this gap widens, and the gap is between us and them, right? And if I had a real magic wand, Greg, and I could make anything that I wanted to have happen in this world, I would want to close the gap between us and them. I think the us and them simply just needs to stop. And, it is, again, it's the single, biggest reason why we have things like genocide, and the dehumanization is the first step to these mass killings and all that. So it's genuinely dangerous and concerning, but it's also isolating, right? And if we're thinking everybody's a them, the us circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's what we're seeing happening. Is the us circle is shrinking to the self, and so, yeah, I don't necessarily know causes. I think that will remain to be seen. We know the difference between correlation and causality, right?
Big way, yes.
There are some interesting correlations between and this is some newer research I came across. The rise, or rather the disruption of how we communicate, right? So back when social media came on the scene, for example, there is a massive drop in empathy. Okay, so 2004, 2005.
But correlative at this point.
Correlative at this point. And then over the next 10-year period, it slowly climbs back, right? And my belief and my suspicion and now that AI has come along and disrupted how we connect and communicate again, there's been another drop, right? So the data remains to be collected. I only have empathy data through 2018. that's what so. But there's only so much you can do with meta-analysis and those types of things. But so I think cause is harder to determine. You can look back at history. You can look at other disruptions. You can look at the printing press. You can look at the assembly line. You can look at what has happened to job markets. What has happened to us versus them in those moments. What has happened to human connection, right? During the disruptions, and so fear creates a scarcity. Fear creates again even more isolation. So there's just so many factors right now, Greg, and I think we're in a point in history where it's easy, I think, for every generation to be like, oh, kids today are terrible, and that's happened for a millennium.
Oh, come on, yeah, of course, every generation.
But it's also like, for once, we kind of look around and say, well, maybe this kind of is different, right? Not the generation that I'm not talking about Gen X or Gen Y or Gen Z or millennial. I don't mean that kind of. I just mean the cohort of humans that exist during this generation on planet Earth right now. There's something different about our technology. There's something different and genuinely new, and it may not just be a situation where, all right, let's let it blow over and we'll the dust will settle, the assembly line, the industrial revolution will come, and then disruption, then the dust will settle, and then, it's not quite like that. The innovation is not only being disruptive, but it's also accelerating.
Exponentially, right? It's accelerating.
Exponentially accelerating. So there's a lot of genuine question marks, and the people in charge of running these and building these AIs are math people, and they have very much left brain. They're engineers, and so where's the empathy? All the AIs are failing all the empathy tests, right? I mean, they're robots, so that's expected. Yeah. But we're also not fully aware yet of when to use this tool for what jobs, and when not to use this tool for which jobs and for which tasks. And we have people going to ChatGPT and asking for couples therapy, and they're using ChatGPT for couples therapy.
Yeah.
Or they're using ChatGPT to write condolences letters for their friends whose family members have passed away. It's almost like, well, we need empathy for that task. Don't use an empathy devoid tool, right, for an empathy task. Anyway, so that's a lot of. We live in an interesting time right now, Greg.
We do. So you. Where I'm going with this a little bit, because you've written a book called The 7-Day Digital Diet, and I have a sense that it is this level of technology that is, at a minimum, exacerbating the isolation problem, the loneliness epidemic, the lack of connection. But your book is called The 7-Day Digital Diet. And the term that's usually thrown around is digital detox. What's the difference between a diet and a detox?
I may be, there's a lot of human connection speakers now, and people have kind of seen this problem develop and want to offer solutions, and there's a lot of people. The conversation is at a frenzied fever pitch, and I am not in the camp of we need to throw our phones in the river and go back to being full. Let's just go full Amish. Let's the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Pandora's box is open. How can we coexist alongside
So this is
technology?
not go outside barefoot and squiggle your toes in the mud.
Right. It's a diet. It's not a fast. It's not a detox, and it's simply a check-in with yourself. Do you like the habits you have? Do you not like the habits you have? Are they serving you? Are they not serving you? And I don't want personally to wake up one day towards the end of my life and look back and be like, boy, I wish I could scroll some more. I feel like, I want to be intentional about how I use technology and how my kids use technology. So that book was something I think my audience really pushed me to write. They're like, hey, get our kids off their phones. Teach our kids to get off their phones. And when I dove into the research and when I dove into, again, my own experience and what my own heart was telling me, it's once again coming back to where do we find that balance?
Yeah.
And how do we empower people to choose, which is hard because, again, the technology is designed. It's like asking somebody to, you're a smoker, just choose to not smoke. I mean, yes, you can, but the cigarettes are also exerting their influence at the same time, So
there's a great chapter on addiction in here. So, in fact, I have it here.
There it is.
So I want to read a passage, short, don't worry, because I'm curious about your thoughts around this. And there, at the beginning of this chapter, there's some humor around phone addiction and how do I tell. But the quote from your book around phone or digital addiction is, if you are addicted to your phone, if you use your phone more often than you'd like, and you're doing so in order to fill a perceived psychological need, which I think is a brilliant definition of addiction, a particular digital addiction. But my question is, if you're in the middle of that addiction, how the hell do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I can't take credit for the definition of addiction. I think it might be Adam Alter, if I'm not mistaken, no, it's the guy who did the David. It's in the book. It's in there. So, how do you know? And I think that for me and my experience is going to be different than my kids' experience. My experience is I have a memory of what it was like before. And I have an experience of what it's like now. And there's something that feels off when I'm finding myself in the scroll hole too much. So with the digital diet, it's a 7-day experience that you go through and you check in, and then before and after, you're going to have these moments where you'll have these experiences that give you insight into that. Because maybe you're right. You won't know. It's like a fish, being asked about water.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great question. It's a great thought. So I guess maybe the answer is do a diet.
Do a diet. Well, but I think that's the brilliance of what you present. It's also the brilliance of the study club, but it's also the brilliance of connection. When you're in the middle of an addiction, and whether that's digital or elsewhere, the AA quote is the first step is admitting you have a problem. Somebody's got to point that out to you, right? So you're on stage going, hey, how often do you use your phone? Do you get phantom buzz in your pocket? Whatever it is. And when people start to question that, that's when they can look at that a little more objectively. But I think there needs to be an impetus there, which is why I love what you do with audiences in that instead.
Yeah, I would agree that it's like anything else. You have to raise awareness, and we have awareness months for a lot of causes. We have people who believe in causes and shine spotlights. I still am someone who loves the events industry and the opportunity for people to get together and share ideas and share experiences. There are people who are getting into the algorithms and putting out content that are trying to get people out of the algorithms via the exact channel that they're in. So it's a conversation. If it's something that is on your heart to share with people in ways big or small, by all means. And the community aspect is such a huge part of it. It other people's experiences can help us. It can be a mirror for us to kind of see ourselves. And but yeah, awareness.
Agreed. All right, I want to finish with two things. One, I want to finish with the digital diet here. Give everybody listening two things they should do this week just to start the diet. What would those two things be?
So if it was to start the actual 7-day digital diet, there are different steps that are more preparatory for the actual diet. But if there's something that you wanted to do just to kind of dabble and dip your toes in, the first step would be to raise your brain's level of awareness. There we go again with that word of when you're in and when you're out, right? When you're in the phone, when you're out of the phone, and why you're going into the phone. So there's got to be some way to measure how often you're opening your phone, when you're opening your phone. There are apps that do this for you. There is one called, and they change, and they're always, and again, I don't have my phone with me, and I have a couple of them on there. Be Present is one of the apps that I like a lot right now, and it's not in the book. It's something that's come out since. It's developed by, I think, these Google computer scientists who are like, we're going to take all the stuff that all these other companies are doing to steal your attention. We're going to use the same tactics to give it back to you. So Be Present is the name of that app. That's a good one. And again, just to start noticing, how often do you find yourself absent-mindedly just disconnected and somewhere inside the phone zone? Start to ask your brain to start showing you those moments, right? So I think in the book we talk about stick a Post-it note every time you unlock your phone. I mean, that would be some of us are opening our phone 200 times a day, and like, oh my goodness. But just the extra step forces the awareness, and then now, I mean, what can't be measured can't be improved, right? So you try to just, that's the first thing I would do is ask your brain to make yourself aware, and then find some piece of technology that can help you track and just start gathering data. That way you can make informed decisions and not just how you feel, because your brain's going to want more dopamine, and it's going to continue to ask for more swiping and scrolling.
Brilliant. One of the things, and tell me if you think this plays or doesn't play, because I have not looked into the research behind it, but one of the recommendations someone made to me was switch your phone. There's a settings in the accessibility portion of a phone where you can switch from color to black and white.
Yes.
And you don't get the dopamine hit from the red dot and from all of those components.
My screensaver is break glass in case of emergency only, right? So don't open this in case of emergency. And let me just make sure that, all right, so there's nothing crazy. So I'm going to do my little magic trick here. This is Tristan Harris taught me this. He was the ex-ethicist at Google that they fired. Tap, 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 color. Tap, 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 black and white.
Oh, I'm going to have to figure that one out.
It's in the book.
That's
so
great.
I believe it's in the book, or it's in one of the bonus website sections, which may or may not still be active. Yeah. So, but then you want to see a picture of your grandkids, your kid, your dog, and then you want it to be color, and now it's like, oh, I got to switch it back.
That's been the challenge. All right, I'll find that piece of the book and do that. Excellent. All right, here's where I'd like to finish. A year ago, you posted about this, so I'm not surprising you with this, but a year ago, this past May, you were suffering under the weight of depression, I guess it would be the way to put it. And I believe, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, you even had some thoughts around self-harm. And this is an incredibly important sort of humanizing thing, and I'd like you to for just a couple of minutes here, share that experience. What was that like going through that?
So, and I posted two different posts, the day of and the day after, right? So there was a period of, I think it was 5 days that I was in bed and just under it, just under the weight of it all. And here's the insight. Here's the, we talked about causality and correlation. I had no reason to be down or be sad. I had no explanation as to why I was down or sad. And, luckily a couple of things happened. I had a human being pull me out of it, right? Another human being that was there for me and just sometimes just laid in the ditch with me. And sometimes, hey, you need to do these things that you need to do. And in terms of like self-care, like you need to eat, and she made sure I ate. So and then the post after is, well, here's how I've stayed healthy over the last year without, any kind of reversion. So what we know, one of the biggest ahas over the last 100 years or so in neuroscience and psychology is that mental health is so closely tied to physical health that it might be the same thing, right? So as thoughts are happening in our brain, there's not like some kind of magical thought ether. These are actual pathways.
Yep.
These are, the complexity is ridiculous, right? A great read on this is called Behave by Robert Sapolsky, one of my favorite neuroscience books.
Brilliant book.
And he just walks you through the chronology of behavior and what happened right before you did the thing and what happened before that and what that would influence that and what would influence that. And so, epigenetics and nutrition and obviously the firing of neurons and all of the complexity of human behavior and human emotion is relevant because that system can be off and it might be low on magnesium. It might be, you don't, right? And so, and that can make, you hear this all the time, like, here's a pill, take this pill. Side effects may include suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
What are you talking? What do you mean that I'm going to put this in my gut? My gut is going to have a reaction and my gut health is going to how is that? Or this pill is going to travel across the blood-brain barrier and influence my thought. I'm in control of my thought. Well,
we think.
No, that's one thing I learned as a mentalist is we are far less in control of our thoughts than we would like to think that we are. And the ability to influence thoughts it's no wonder why these little devices have such a grip and a hold on us. And because one of the first tasks is like, you can stop anytime you want. Like that's one of the first, like I can stop anytime I want. I'm not addicted. I'm not hooked. I'm not influenced. I can do whatever I want. I make my choices. So I had this experience, Greg, of just my brain for whatever reason, and I still don't know. I did a whole bunch of things to try to pull out of it. I mean, I didn't. I was face down in bed, and nutrition. You got to move your body. You got to drink water. I mean, there's all these things that add up to mental health.
Yeah.
And so the awareness piece comes in that distinction between it's not that. I mean, there are types of depression where something bad happens to you and you get sad, and that's fine, right? A life event, you're grieving. That's called reactive depression. That's totally fine. Makes total sense. Then you've got the clinical side, right, where now. And scientists are still we're still trying to figure all this stuff out. We're still trying to figure all this. It's been called a chemical imbalance, which is a gross oversimplification, but you get the idea that it's not a moral failing to be sad when good things are happening, right? So the awareness has to be that if you cut your arm and you bleed, it makes sense. Your arm is cut and you're bleeding. If you've got something going on in your gut health and you're suicidal, well, let's get the right thing fixed. It's not buck up and pull it together and right. So being there for each other, checking in on each other, and helping people understand that we are not slaves to our thoughts, and our thoughts don't define us and who we are. I'm sure you've all had thoughts that you didn't expect. They came out of left field, and it's like, whoa, what was that? I mean, I don't feel like I'm doing this justice in terms of the importance and the magnitude of the topic. I don't want to minimize it. I don't want to be flippant. I don't want to again, minimize the emotional side of it and the real experiences that people have, because that's also a factor, is the experience that the human that has this brain is having, right?
Yep.
That is all part of the equation. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I think it is certainly something that is part of being, again, human, is
Yes.
that we have these organs, and one of them is a brain, and it sometimes just does its thing, you know, and we want to be able to do what we can do in order to have a life that we enjoy and that is full, and we want to stick around for the people who need us and the people who care for us. So,
Amen to that. So, to close, for the folks who've never struggled with this or been around someone who's struggled with this, what would you tell them?
so we didn't talk about this at all, Greg, but a part of researching this book was I volunteered at the suicide prevention hotline, and I answered calls for about a year and a half, and went through their whole training process and learned all of the ropes about this. And the single biggest takeaway is that, you know, and of course we get all the calls, we get all the situations. There's somebody on a ledge, there's somebody in their car in a garage, and they're letting the exhaust go, and they're just, and sometimes you get them, and sometimes you don't. And so the single biggest takeaway is that you don't talk somebody out of suicide. You don't talk somebody off the ledge, right?
Nope.
You listen them off the ledge. And to the extent that another human being and human connection can have influence, right, which we do have influence over brain chemistry of the people around us, it's not a full, you know, there's obviously other factors that some we don't have control over. But to the extent that we can have the influence or the control, it is very much 90 to 95% listening, and then 5 to 10% talking. And the talking that we're doing is asking about them, and curiosity and interest and empathy, right? And again, sitting in the dirt, in the ditch with them.
Yep.
And just having somebody be there. In fact, in the UK, there is a group called the Samaritans, and they're not allowed to interfere. The whole point is to have somebody be with them when they pass, right?
Yeah.
It's not to prevent them from making that decision. So I don't know if that's still the case, but that's kind of how it was founded, and it may still be. But it's powerful either way, right? It's a powerful thing, and obviously, what our mission was and our goal was to prevent these and make sure that somebody didn't make a forever decision based on something that might be that is definitely temporary. So,
Well, I think it brings it full circle, right? The way I think about this is be there, be present, check in, connect. And if that's you, you're doing what you can. And that's the end of the story. So, Tim, I am super excited to have you at Symposium this year. You're going to be doing multiple things, but the big one is the keynote, January, Marco Island, Florida. So sign up, everybody. Shameless plug. But thank you for spending a little time with us today, and I'm really excited to see you in Florida in just a few months.
me too, Greg. I love the idea of Florida in January, and happy to be there. I'll be there with bells on, and it's so true, man, that of all the experiences I've had with magic, with mentalism, there is truly something magical about the human brain and the space between human brains and the connections that are formed. It's cheesy when you say it that way, but the human connection, that's real magic.
It absolutely works. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.